Commander Vex'lor Tagun of the Kraavi Dominion stood on the observation deck of the dreadnought Inevitable Conquest, his six-fingered hands clasped behind his back as he watched the planet below burn. The blue-green world, once designated as Nova Terra by its human inhabitants, was now decorated with spreading patches of orange and red. It's like a diseased organism succumbing to fever. Remind me again why High Command decided these humans needed to be taught such a dramatic lesson? Vex'lor asked, not bothering to look at his second-in-command. Science Officer Mira Nayal moved to stand beside him, her scaled skin reflecting the dancing fires below. Intelligence reports indicated they were expanding too rapidly, Commander. 17 colonies in 30 solar cycles. The Dominion Council voted unanimously that a preemptive strike was necessary. Vex'lor snorted. Preemptive? Against these primitive creatures? They barely have functioning gravity drives. Their weapons are practically Stone Age compared to ours. Perhaps, but their reproduction and expansion rates are concerning, Mira replied, pulling up a holographic chart. Their population doubles every 48 solar cycles. Projections show they would have reached our territory within 200 cycles. Vex'lor waved a dismissive hand through the hologram. 200 cycles. I could have died peacefully of old age before they became a problem. The Council didn't share your relaxed perspective, Mira said dryly. They wanted to send a message. Oh, they've sent a message all right, Vex'lor muttered, watching as another orbital bombardment struck the human colony's capital city. Though I doubt anyone's left down there to receive it, the attack had been swift and merciless. The Nova Terra colony, home to nearly 3 million humans, had minimal defenses. Their pitiful excuse for a planetary shield had collapsed after the first barrage. Their handful of orbital platforms had been vaporized within minutes. Now, 12 hours into the assault, there was nothing left but to ensure complete elimination of all human presence. Commander, the communications officer called from his station. We're receiving a transmission. It's from Earth. Vex'lor turned, his brow ridge rising in surprise. Earth? Their homeworld? How fascinating. They must have received the distress calls. Put it through. Yet, the main view screen flickered to life, revealing a human female with dark skin and silver-streaked hair. Her face was composed, almost eerily calm, but her eyes, even Vex'lor, who had limited experience reading human expressions, could see the cold fury in them. I am Admiral Zara Okafor of the United Earth Defense Force, she said, her voice steady and measured. To whom am I speaking? Vex'lor stepped forward, adopting what he hoped was an intimidating posture. Commander Vex'lor Tagun of the Kraavi Dominion. I must say, Admiral, I'm surprised you've contacted us so quickly. Your communication technology is more advanced than our reports suggested. There are many things about us that your reports have failed to accurately assess, Okafor replied, including our response to unprovoked aggression. Vex'lor laughed, a grating sound that echoed around the bridge. Unprovoked? Perhaps. Necessary? Absolutely. Your species breeds and spreads like a virus. Admiral, the Dominion has simply administered the cure. I see, Okafor said, her expression unchanging. And you believe this cure will prevent further infection? Nova Terra was chosen as an example, Vex'lor explained, enjoying the opportunity to educate this primitive being. Return to your homeworld. Remain there. The Kraavi Dominion claims all territories beyond your solar system. Violation of this edict will result in similar consequences for other colonies and eventually Earth itself. Admiral Okafor was silent for a moment, studying Vex'lor with those unsettling eyes. Commander Tagun, are you familiar with human history? The question caught Vex'lor off guard. I failed to see the relevance. That's unfortunate, Okafor replied, because if you were, you might understand why what you've done today was not just monstrous, but monumentally stupid. Vex'lor bristled. You dare. We will respond, Okafor continued, cutting him off, not with anger or haste, but with precision and purpose. I suggest you enjoy your victory while you can, Commander. You have approximately 72 hours before the consequences of your actions find you. The transmission cut off. Vex'lor stood motionless for several seconds before breaking into laughter. The bridge crew joined in nervously. "Did you hear that?" he asked Mira. 72 hours. What do they think they're going to do? Their fastest ships would take weeks to reach us. Perhaps they're bluffing, Mira suggested, though she looked uneasy. Of course they're bluffing. Vex'lor snorted. It's a primitive species making primitive threats. Complete the bombardment. I want this planet's surface sterilized before we return to Kraavi Prime for our victory celebration. Yes, Commander. As the final bombardment commenced, Vex'lor returned to his quarters. The campaign had been a success. 3 million humans eliminated. A clear message sent. The Dominion Council would be pleased, and his promotion to Fleet Admiral was all but assured. Yet something about Admiral Okafor's calm demeanor nagged at him. There had been no pleading, no desperate negotiations, just that cold statement of fact. We will respond. Vex'lor dismissed the thought. What could they possibly do? 71 hours later, Vex'lor was awakened by the ship's alert system. Commander to the bridge. Unknown vessels approaching. Vex'lor dressed quickly and made his way to the command deck. Report. He barked as he entered. 5 ships, Commander. The tactical officer replied. They appeared at the edge of the system just moments ago. Appeared? You mean they dropped out of FTL? No, sir. They just appeared. Our sensors detected a localized distortion in space-time, and then they were there. Vex'lor frowned. That's impossible. Show me. The main screen displayed 5 sleek, black vessels approaching in formation. They were smaller than the inevitable conquest, but their design was unlike anything Vex'lor had ever seen. There's no visible propulsion systems, no weapon emplacements. Just smooth, almost organic-looking hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Are they human vessels? Vex'lor asked. Unknown, sir. But they're transmitting on human frequencies. Open a channel. The screen flickered, and Admiral Okafor's face appeared once again. This time, she was seated in what appeared to be a command chair. Commander Tagun, she said, nodding slightly. I informed you that we would respond. Vex'lor straightened his uniform. These are your ships? I must admit, they're more advanced than I expected. But 5 vessels against my dreadnought and its escorts. This is foolishness, Admiral. Is it? Okafor asked. You see, Commander, in your arrogance you've made 3 critical errors. First, you assumed our technological capabilities matched your intelligence reports. Second, you believed that destroying one colony would break our will rather than unite us. But your third error, your most catastrophic one, was failing to understand a fundamental truth about humanity. And what truth is that? Vex'lor asked, growing irritated. We're very, very good at war. Okafor replied simply. We've had thousands of years of practice killing each other. The technologies we've developed, the strategies we've perfected, we kept them hidden, hoping we'd never need to use them against other species. But you've forced our hand. Vex'lor's tactical officer leaned forward. Commander, the human vessels are deploying something. Hundreds of small objects. Analysis? Vex'lor demanded. Unknown, sir. They're approximately 2 meters in length. Minimal energy signatures. Okafor's expression remained unchanged. Those are Rift drones, Commander. Relativistic interphase fold technology. A little something we developed about 50 years ago but kept classified. Each one contains a microscopic artificial singularity. Vex'lor felt a chill run down his spine. You're bluffing. That technology is theoretical at best. For you, perhaps, Okafor replied. For us, it's been operational for decades. We didn't share it because, frankly, it's terrifying. Each drone can create a localized fold in space-time, essentially teleporting matter from one point to another instantaneously. In this case, that's all. They're programmed to teleport critical components of your ship's system's power cores, life support, weapons control into the void between stars. Shields up. Activate point defense systems, Vex'lor ordered. It won't help, Okafor said. The drones don't need to penetrate your shields. They fold space around them. As if on cue, Alarms began blaring across the bridge. Systems throughout the ship began failing simultaneously. Vex'lor watched in horror as his tactical display showed the same happening to every vessel in his fleet. "What have you done?" he whispered. "We've disabled your ships," Okafor replied. "Not destroyed them. Not yet. Your crews will have approximately 6 hours of emergency life support, enough time for your escape pods to launch and reach the habitable moon of the gas giant in this system. I suggest you begin evacuation immediately." Vex'lor snarled. "You think this ends here? The Dominion will send 100 ships to crush your world." "No," Okafor said with absolute certainty. "They won't. Because when we leave this system, there will be nothing left of it to return to. The Rift technology has other applications beyond disabling ships, Commander. On a larger scale, it can fold space around an entire star, creating a feedback loop that triggers a premature nova event." Vex'lor felt the blood drain from his face. "Kigmektanat. Idiante, you would destroy an entire star system? Billions of lives on the outer planets? We've already scanned the system," Okafor replied. "No sentient life forms except for your forces. And yes, we absolutely would. In fact, we already have the system surrounded with rift generators. In exactly 6 hours, this star will go nova, erasing all evidence that you were ever here." She leaned forward. "This is our response, Commander. 1 colony for 1 star system. A proportionate demonstration. You're insane." Vex'lor whispered. "No, Commander. We're human." Okafor's voice hardened. "Return to your Dominion. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that Earth has a simple policy. Leave us and our colonies in peace, or face extinction. We did not seek this conflict, but we will end it decisively if forced." The transmission cut off. Moments later, the bridge crew confirmed that every ship in the fleet was dead in space, running on emergency power only. Vex'lor stood in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. In less than 5 minutes, his entire fleet had been neutralized by technology he couldn't even comprehend. And now, if the human admiral was to be believed, they had less than 6 hours to evacuate before the star itself was destroyed. "Commander?" Mira asked, her voice shaking. "Your orders?" Vex'lor looked at the tactical display once more. The human vessels remained in formation, watching, waiting. He thought about the casual way Admiral Okafor had explained their technology, as if discussing the weather. He thought about the cold fury in her eyes when she first contacted them after the bombardment of Nova Terra. "Launch all escape pods," he said quietly. "Transmit evacuation orders to all ships. We have 6 hours. As the evacuation began, Vex'lor returned to the observation deck, staring at the still smoldering planet below. What had once been a demonstration of Kraavi power now seemed like a terrible, terrible mistake. He had thought the humans were primitive, weak, easily cowed. Instead, they had revealed themselves to be something far more dangerous. A species that had mastered the art of war so thoroughly that they could defeat an enemy without even firing a conventional weapon. A species that could destroy a star with the same casual efficiency with which he had ordered the bombardment of their colony. As he made his way to his own escape pod, Vex'lor wondered what the Dominion Council would say when he delivered Admiral Okafor's message. Would they believe him? Would they understand the threat they now faced? Or would they make the same fatal error he had made, underestimating humanity's capacity for both mercy and vengeance? The answer, he suspected, would determine whether the Kraavi Dominion had a future at all. Because one thing was now terrifyingly clear. The humans weren't just another species to be conquered. They were a force of nature. And Vex'lor Tagun had just awakened them. 7 Kraavi solar cycles had passed since the Nova Terra incident. 7 cycles of paranoia, political upheaval, and frantic military buildups across the Dominion. Former Commander, now prisoner 37891 Vex'lor Tagun sat in his cell aboard the orbital detention facility circling Kraavi Prime. The walls were bare except for a small viewport that offered a tantalizing glimpse of freedom, stars, space, and the blue-green curve of his homeworld below. "Enjoying the view, traitor?" The voice belonged to Guardian Pel Tix, a hulking brute assigned to torment Vex'lor daily. Peltix took special pleasure in his work, having lost a cousin in what was now officially called the stellar catastrophe. Always, Vex'lor replied without turning around. Reminds me that some things survive, even when leaders make catastrophic mistakes. Your mistake was failing to eliminate the humans properly, Peltix growled, thumping his shock baton against the energy barrier that served as a door. A real warrior would have pushed on to their homeworld immediately. Vex'lor finally turned, a bitter smile on his face, and that, Guardian, is precisely why you wear that uniform instead of a commander's insignia. The ignorance in this empire truly astounds me, even after all this time. Watch your tongue, prisoner. Your execution is scheduled for tomorrow. High Council finally tired of your warnings and predictions. Ah yes, silenced the messenger. A time-honored tradition among failing civilizations. Vex'lor stood up slowly, his once proud posture now stooped from confinement. Tell me, Guardian, have you noticed more human vessels at the borders lately? Peltix's expression flickered, confirming what Vex'lor already knew. Thought so. Vex'lor continued. They're watching, measuring, assessing, just as Admiral Okafor promised. Up, down, peasant. Up, pigeon. The High Council believes they're bluffing, Peltix said, though his voice lacked conviction. One star system was a lucky strike. They couldn't possibly. An alarm cut through their conversation. Its high-pitched wail, unlike anything Vex'lor had heard before. Attention all personnel, boomed the facility's announcement system. Unknown vessels have breached Kraavi Prime security perimeter. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Peltix's eyes widened as he activated his wrist communicator. Command, this is Guardian Peltix in Detention Block 7. Request status update. The response was nothing but static. Well, Guardian, Vex'lor said, leaning casually against the wall. It appears we're about to learn whether the humans were bluffing after all. Admiral Zara Okafor stood on the bridge of the U.S. Retribution, watching with grim satisfaction as the Kraavi defense fleet scattered before her task force. 7 years of preparation had led to this moment. 7 years of technological advancement, strategic planning, and psychological warfare. Still no response to our transmission, Admiral. Lieutenant Raj Patel reported from communications. Keep broadcasting on all frequencies, Okafor replied. They need to understand we could have attacked without warning. Think they'll believe we destroyed their communications satellites by accident? Commander Marcus Durand asked, a wry smile on his face. Okafor shot him a look. The selective disruption was necessary. We need their leadership isolated and confused, not coordinating a counterattack. Ghost Squadron reports all orbital defense platforms neutralized, Tactical Officer Layla Toma announced. Rift drones have disabled their weapons systems only, as ordered. Excellent, Okafor nodded. And the ground-based ion cannons? Neutralized. Shadow Team operatives completed their sabotage missions without detection. Okafor allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The plan was proceeding perfectly. No Kraavi casualties, yet a point she had insisted upon despite pressure from the Joint Chiefs. This was to be a demonstration of power, not vengeance. Admiral, Patel called out. We're receiving a transmission from the Kraavi High Council. About time, Okafor muttered. On screen, the view screen activated to show a group of 7 Kraavi officials, their scales displaying distress patterns Okafor had learned to recognize during years of studying their species. At the center sat High Chancellor Drav Kor, his elaborate headdress marking his supreme authority. This is High Chancellor Drav Kor of the Kraavi Dominion, he began, his voice a carefully controlled rumble. You have committed an act of war against our sovereign. No, Chancellor, Okafor interrupted. You committed an act of war 7 years ago when you destroyed Nova Terra and massacred 3 million human civilians. Today we are simply delivering the consequences of that action. Drav Kor's throat sac inflated slightly, a sign of agitation. The Nova Terra action was a necessary preemptive measure against human expansion. A justification we've heard before, Okafor replied coolly, but let's not waste time repeating history. I'm here to deliver terms. Terms? Dravkor hissed. The Kraavi Dominion does not accept terms from lesser species. Okafor raised an eyebrow. Chancellor, perhaps you misunderstand the situation. Look, to your orbital defenses neutralized, your communication network severed, your planetary shield generators offline. We achieved this without firing a single lethal shot. The Chancellor's advisors whispered urgently among themselves. If you doubt our resolve, Okafor continued, I invite you to observe. She nodded to Commander Durand, who pressed a sequence on his console. The view screen split, showing a small, uninhabited moon orbiting Kraavi Prime. This is Kraavi's third moon, Okafor explained unnecessarily. No settlements, no bases, no strategic value, just a demonstration. 5 Rift drones appeared near the moon, positioning themselves in a precise geometric pattern. A moment later, space itself seemed to fold around the celestial body. There was no explosion, no dramatic flash, simply the seamless disappearance of the entire moon. The Kraavi delegation stared in horrified silence. Where did it go? One advisor finally stammered, approximately 12 light-years away. Okafor replied matter-of-factly, into empty space, safely away from any celestial bodies or shipping lanes. We're not monsters, Chancellor. Unlike those who ordered the Nova Terra genocide. Dravkor's composure cracked visibly. What do you want? Dodd. First, the immediate release of former Commander Vex'lor Tagun, who we understand has been imprisoned for attempting to warn you about us. Second, reparations for the Nova Terra massacre, to be paid to the families of the victims. Third, the resignation and trial of all Dominion Council members who authorized the attack. And finally, a formal treaty establishing clear boundaries between our civilizations. This is outrageous. Dravkor sputtered. You cannot dictate internal Kraavi politics. We just relocated one of your moons without breaking a sweat. Chancellor, Okafor pointed out, I assure you we can dictate whatever we please, but we choose negotiation over annihilation. That's the difference between our species. She leaned forward slightly. You have 6 hours to begin compliance with these terms. After that, we will demonstrate our capabilities on targets of increasing significance. I suggest you use this time wisely. The transmission ended at Okafor's signal. Think they'll comply? Durand asked. They're pragmatists at heart. Okafor replied, and we've just shown them the math doesn't work in their favor. In his cell, Vex'lor could only piece together fragmented information from the panicked conversations of passing guards, something about a moon vanishing, human ships that appeared out of nowhere, defense systems failing simultaneously across the planet. He smiled ruefully. Admiral Okafor had kept her word after all. The energy barrier to his cell suddenly deactivated. Peltic stood in the doorway, along with 2 ranking Dominion officials Vex'lor recognized from his trial. Prisoner Tagun, said Councillor Vesnan, her voice strained. Your presence is required by the High Council. Oh? Vex'lor raised an eyebrow ridge. Has my execution been moved up? How thoughtful. The execution has been suspended, the second official said. The humans are demanding your release as part of their terms. Vex'lor couldn't help but laugh. Are they now? How very interesting. And why would they care about the fate of the commander who ordered the destruction of their colony? We were hoping you might provide insight into that question, Vesnan replied tightly. Perhaps, Vex'lor mused, stepping out of his cell with deliberate slowness, it's because I'm the only Kraavi who truly understands what we're dealing with. The only one who has looked into their eyes and seen the truth. And what truth is that? Peltic demanded. Vex'lor straightened his posture, reclaiming a small measure of his former dignity. That we awakened something ancient and terrible, not in technology, though theirs clearly surpasses ours. No, we awakened something in their nature, something they had been trying to evolve beyond. He began walking down the corridor, forcing the others to follow. Humans spent thousands of years trying to overcome their capacity for retribution. They built elaborate moral codes and philosophical frameworks to channel their aggressive instincts, and they were succeeding, slowly becoming explorers rather than conquerors. Vex'lor stopped suddenly, turning to face his escorts. Then we murdered 3 million of them and told them to stay in their corner of the galaxy. We couldn't have made a worse miscalculation if we'd tried. 2 hours later, Vex'lor found himself in a shuttle approaching the human flagship. Through the viewport, he could see the massive vessel, elegant and sleek, yet somehow more menacing than the utilitarian designs of Kraavi warships. The High Council had agreed to all of Admiral Okafor's terms with surprising speed. The demonstration with the moon had been particularly persuasive, especially when human transmissions revealed they had similarly surrounded 20 other Kraavi worlds with rift devices. The message was clear: comply or face systematic dismantling of the entire Dominion. As the shuttle docked, Vex'lor composed himself. He wasn't sure why the humans had demanded his release specifically, but he intended to maintain what little dignity he had left. The airlock cycled, and Vex'lor stepped aboard the human vessel. Admiral Okafor waited in the docking bay, flanked by 2 officers. She looked exactly as she had 7 years ago, perhaps a few more silver strands in her hair, a few more lines around her eyes, but otherwise unchanged. "Commander Tagun," she said, offering a slight nod. "Just Vex'lor now," he replied. "My rank was stripped when I suggested the Dominion should negotiate with your species rather than prepare for war. A wise recommendation," Okafor said, "though I'm not surprised it was ignored." "The Kraavi aren't known for wisdom when pride is at stake," Vex'lor admitted. "May I ask why you insisted on my release? I am, after all, the one who ordered the attack on your colony." Okafor gestured for him to follow as she turned and began walking. "Under orders from your council. Our intelligence suggests you've spent the last 7 years trying to convince your leadership to pursue diplomatic solutions." And Vex'lor blinked in surprise. "Your intelligence networks penetrated the Dominion that deeply?" "Let's just say we've been paying very close attention since Nova Terra," Okafor replied. "They entered a lift that carried them upward through the ship. We needed someone who understands both sides, someone the Kraavi might actually listen to." "For what purpose?" Vex'lor asked cautiously. The lift doors opened to reveal the bridge. Unlike the dimly lit, utilitarian command centers of Kraavi vessels, this space was bright, efficient, and humming with activity. "For the negotiations that begin tomorrow," Okafor said, stopping at the main viewport. Below them, Kraavi Prime rotated slowly. "Despite what your propaganda claims, we don't want war, Vex'lor. We never did. What we want is security for our colonies and recognition of our right to exist in this galaxy." "And if you had simply destroyed us?" Vex'lor asked. "Surely that would have been easier than this elaborate demonstration." "Easier, yes, but not better." Okafor turned to face him directly. 7 years ago, you made an assumption about human nature that we could be intimidated into submission. Today, you might be making another assumption that our goal is domination or revenge. Both would be incorrect?" "Profoundly." Okafor nodded to an aide, who brought forward a data tablet. "This contains our proposed treaty. Reasonable boundaries. Non-aggression pacts. Cultural exchange initiatives. Even technology sharing in non-military sectors." Vex'lor took the device, skimming the contents with growing astonishment. "This is remarkably generous, given the circumstances. We believe in proportionate response," Okafor said simply. "You took a colony. We demonstrated we could take your entire civilization if we chose to." "Point made. Now we move forward." Vex'lor looked up from the tablet. "And my role in this? Special envoy?" Okafor replied. "You understand the stakes better than any other Kraavi. You've seen what we're capable of, both the destruction and the restraint. You can explain to your people why cooperation is preferable to continued hostility." "Mo. And if I refuse?" Okafor shrugged. "Then you're free to return to Kraavi Prime. Our quarrel was never specifically with you, Vex'lor. You were following orders, terrible, misguided orders, but orders nonetheless." Vex'lor stared out at his homeworld, considering. For 7 years he had tried to make his people understand the threat they had awakened. For 7 years he had been branded a coward and a traitor. And now, vindicated at last, he was being offered the chance to save his civilization from its own arrogance. "I accept," he said quietly. "Though I doubt many will listen." "They'll listen," Okafor assured him. After today, they have no choice. 3 months later, Oboshai, Maitlai. Vex'lor stood before the newly formed Galactic Concord Assembly. Representatives from 17 spacefaring species gathered to witness the formal treaty signing between Earth and the Kraavi Dominion. The proceedings were being broadcast across both civilizations. On Earth and its colonies, citizens watched with solemn remembrance of Nova Terra's fallen. Throughout the Dominion, a subdued population observed what many considered their greatest humiliation. But Vex'lor saw it differently. As he prepared to address the assembly, he reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here from conqueror to prisoner to diplomat. Distinguished representatives, he began, his voice carrying across the grand chamber. Today marks not the humiliation of the Kraavi, as some have claimed, but our salvation from a path that would have led to our destruction. He paused, looking around the chamber. 7 years ago, I commanded the fleet that destroyed Nova Terra. I did so believing in Kraavi superiority, in our right to dictate terms to a lesser species. In return, humanity showed us not just their technological superiority, but something far more powerful: restraint. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. They could have destroyed us entirely. Vex'lor continued. Our defenses were nothing to their rift technology, our weapons useless against their shields. Yet instead of annihilation, they chose conversation. Instead of genocide, they chose justice. He turned to where Admiral Okafor sat with the Earth delegation. The humans have a saying: the true measure of strength is not in how much destruction you can cause, but in how much you can withhold. I did not understand this until recently. The Kraavi have always equated power with the willingness to use it. The humans showed us that sometimes the greatest power lies in choosing not to. Vex'lor raised his voice for the final part of his address. Let this treaty stand as a reminder to all civilizations. Judge not a species by its appearance or its age, but by the principles that guide it. The humans could have wiped us out as easily as we destroyed Nova Terra. That they chose another path should tell us everything we need to know about who they truly are, and perhaps, who we might one day become. As the chamber erupted in applause, Vex'lor caught Admiral Okafor's eye. She gave him a small nod of acknowledgement. Later, at the reception following the signing ceremony, Okafor approached him with 2 glasses of Earth champagne. Impressive speech, she said, handing him one of the glasses. Though I notice you left out the part where we transported one of your moons across the galaxy. Vex'lor accepted the drink cautiously. Some details are best left for the history books. Besides, I believe you're returning it next month as a gesture of goodwill. Already in transit. Okafor confirmed with a slight smile. Should slip back into orbit within the week. Our scientists are still arguing about whether to classify that as an act of astronomical tidying or the galaxy's most excessive moving service. Vex'lor surprised himself by laughing. You know, in all our intelligence briefings about humans, no one ever mentioned your species' peculiar sense of humor. There's a lot your briefings missed, Okafor replied. Just as our early assessments of the Kraavi missed your capacity for change. Vex'lor swirled the bubbling liquid in his glass, watching the light play through it. Do you think it will last? This peace? Okafor considered the question seriously. That depends on whether both our peoples remember the lessons of Nova Terra. She looked out across the reception, where humans and Kraavi were cautiously beginning to interact. Conflict is easy. Understanding is hard, but I'm optimistic. But because of the treaty? No, Okafor said, her gaze returning to Vex'lor. Because of people like you, those who can learn from mistakes rather than repeat them, and those who can look at an enemy and see a potential ally instead. She raised her glass. To unexpected diplomats, Vex'lor hesitated only briefly before raising his own, and to proportionate responses. As they drank, Vex'lor reflected that perhaps the humans' most terrifying quality wasn't their technology or their military prowess. It was their capacity to turn enemies into partners, to transform conflict into cooperation. They had wiped out a Kraavi fleet and neutralized an entire star system without taking a single life. They had brought the mighty Dominion to its knees without firing a shot. Ia Ruxel. And now they were offering friendship as if the past could be, if not forgotten, then at least used as foundation for something better. Terrifying indeed. But also, Vex'lor had to admit, rather admirable. From the observation deck of the assembly station, Earth glowed blue and white in the distance, beautiful, seemingly peaceful, yet home to a species capable of both unimaginable destruction and unprecedented mercy. The humans had a saying for this too, one that Vex'lor had recently learned and found disturbingly appropriate: don't mistake kindness for weakness. The Kraavi Dominion had made exactly that mistake. They would not make it again.